Well, this is about jobs in Minnesota. In 1995, 5,000 workers and 750 full-time vendors were involved in the film industry in Minnesota. We now have 300 to 500 workers and about 20 vendors. But this is about carpenters, painters, electricians, caterers, and many other people. We need to stimulate an industry again here in Minnesota that was once thriving. At our hearing, which is following this, we'll listen to several options and proposals. They range from general fund appropriations to tax credits to the proposal that we're going to discuss here today. These options need not be exclusive of each other. They are all viable. Now, I'm pleased that Ralph Winter and Robert Schwartz from Hollywood, studio veterans, have come here from Los Angeles to help us unveil a new plan for movies in Minnesota. And might I add that this is the only reason why they are here today. The new Association of Minnesota Motion Pictures, or AMP, presents a proposal that gives us the opportunity to increase Minnesota's competitiveness in the global feature film industry by using a funding mechanism that will give Minnesota ownership in theatrically released feature films. These strategies and this one can complement other existing efforts in the state to strengthen our film industry. And that's what it's all about. It's about jobs and stimulating an industry in Minnesota that frankly has fallen on hard times. And with that, I'd like to bring up the chair of the Legacy Committee, Representative Kahn.
Thank you, Dean. It's been a pleasure to work with Representative Urdahl and the principals of the AMP, the Association of Minnesota Motion Pictures, on the legislation that we're introducing today. We have several reasons why we're supportive of this initiative. First, as Dean said, the AMP program will promote jobs and growth in the film industry sector in Minnesota. The program has a direct alignment with the ongoing objectives of the Legacy Amendment. This program will enhance the legacy of film in Minnesota. It will create a point of connection for Minnesota citizens as they view their heritage, stories, and traditions on the screen, and it will provide a permanent legacy of artistic work created on film in the state. This AMP program will reestablish Minnesota's leadership in the global film economy and provide us with a critically needed competitive edge. This program will break precedent with Minnesota programs as it's designed and structured to reimburse the state of Minnesota and become a program that's financially self-sustaining. As Representative Urdahl said, we're pleased to have film producers Robert Schwartz and Ralph Winter here with us today, along with Minnesotans Denise Gardner and Jane Minton representing AMP. And each of them are going to have a few words to explain the proposed program, much better than I could. So I'm now very pleased to present Denise Gardner, who will give the rest of the information to us.
Or Dean Gardner.
Either one.
A fusion of the two of us. My name is Denise Gardner, and thank you, Representative Kahn and Urdahl. I'm here today along with my colleagues Robert Schwartz and Ralph Winter and Jane Minton. We're here at the Capitol to talk about the motion picture business, but more specifically, we're here today to discuss specific legislation that we believe will give Minnesota a real seat at the table when it comes to the business of motion pictures. Grumpy Old Men, Fargo, Mighty Ducks, these are just some film titles that most everyone here certainly is familiar with. And of course, we know that these films were shot here in Minnesota. These movies did well at the box office and made a lot of money for its studio investors, meaning Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal Studios, and the like. So I want to launch this press conference with this fundamental question. Why shouldn't the state of Minnesota benefit financially from films that are produced here? The short answer is that it can. There is no good reason why it shouldn't. But there is a good reason why, until now, we have not been directly benefiting financially. And the reality is that for the last 30 years, we have not had the collection of intellectual capital, the organizations, or the professional facilities in place to enable Minnesota to own a piece of films like Grumpy Old Men, Mighty Ducks, or Fargo. Today, this is about to change. My colleagues have flown here from Los Angeles to explain to the Legacy Committee members in detail how this can be and show us why it would be prudent to take advantage of this unique opportunity. But first, let me briefly introduce each of them. Robert Schwartz, a former Minnesotan, is a founding member of the Independent Feature Project, IFP Minnesota, and was principally involved in creating the original Minnesota Film and TV Board. 20 years ago, Robert relocated to Los Angeles and produced Iron Will for Walt Disney Pictures, ran the development and production of numerous mid-budget films, including the Lionsgate Films release of Woolly Boys, Virginia's Run, and Dave Barry's Complete Guide to Guys, the MGM UA direct-to-video releases Kart Racer, among many others. Ralph Winter has produced 6 films since 2000 that have proven to be some of the most profitable films in the industry, collectively grossing over $2.1 billion in worldwide box office. He collaborated with 20th Century Fox in 1999, producing Marvel's X-Men, and then went on with Fox to produce Planet of the Apes, X-Men 2, and X-Men: The Last Stand, Fantastic Four, and Fantastic Four: The Rise of the Silver Surfer. Jane Minton, here, is the founding executive director of Independent Feature Project Minnesota, and until recently led that organization for 25 years. She's on the boards of IFP National, KFAI Community Radio, Zeitgeist, and International Television Association, where she was the board president from 1988 to 1989. Me, Denise Gardner, I'm a licensed attorney here in Minnesota, and I'm a producer. I own a commercial and film production facility in Northeast Minneapolis, where I've run my production company, F-Stop Productions, for the last 10 years. And with that said, I'd like to turn this discussion over to Robert Schwartz. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I want to start by telling you just a little story of what motivates me after living here for almost 20 years and now living in LA for 20 years. I was making this picture, Iron Will. This is 1993. Canada is a huge draw with currently a $375 million fund to pull things right over the border. And that's what they do on a regular basis with a program that has been, I guess, 2.5 decades. And during the process of setting up Iron Will, the studio was pushing me across to make Iron Will in Winnipeg. And truly, I'm sure I would have lost that battle had the governor, not at the time, helped me secure the rights to 4 different railroads because I had steam trains running everywhere. And that is what allowed the picture to be shot here. If it were not for that piece of information, that picture would have gone to Canada. And that's really where this starts in my head, because the focus of this program is not to see what comes to Minnesota, it's to go from Minnesota and grab a picture and bring it back. And this program is driven as a proactive program, a program that will invest in pictures and put the last part of the financing in place, and from that point, require that the picture comes back. Now, there are a dozen significant conservative rules about how this will be done, and I could go through all of them, but we would be here till this evening. But it is a program that is designed to invest in films, bring them here so that they work here, and that money that is invested truly gets spent here on people that do scenic art and props and construction and hotels and all types of vendors and film crews and equipment houses. And that is the short of it. And the other side of that is that after that investment, these pictures, we will own a part of that picture. So if it were a Fargo or Grumpy Old Men or Iron Will too, there would be income that comes in from owning a part of that picture to come back into the Legacy Fund. So that's really the short version of it. And I'm going to turn this to Ralph Winter, who I've known for 20 plus years, and let him give you the Hollywood version of perspective.
We're childhood friends, so it hasn't been that long. I think the movie business and television business has changed. It's a global business. It's a business where producers and studios and independents are looking to
piece together the financing for movies that audiences want to see. And studios have graduated to the tentpole movies, the big high-profile movies, and the gap that's left is being put together by independent financing and independent producers. And this program, I think, allows Minnesota to be in a very unique place where you, as with public funds, are investing in movies, get the chance to see that jobs and the churn of that money being spent in Minnesota benefits the economy, but also take an equity position in owning a piece of that film. And I think that message being sent out to agencies and independent companies and studios that do specialty films like Searchlight and Sony Classics will be a welcome message that will get attention to bring productions here. Certainly, I've experienced from California, lots of snow. You have a guaranteed amount of snow here, and we constantly are searching for and chasing snow in pictures. So for studios and producers to know they could come here and actually find a partner to invest with them in those kinds of pictures, I think is a tremendous advantage. So I think this is welcome news, and I think that, again, the agencies and studios will be delighted to see that this is something that separates Minnesota from everybody else and has an attractive package with credits and with investment to bring movies here. So, Jane.
I'm next. Yeah. Thanks, Ralph. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. One thing I've learned in the 25 years that I ran IFP Minnesota, which is a nonprofit filmmaker organization, is that those of us in the film industry have to be imaginative, resourceful, and competitive. As the competition and demands upon filmmakers and the industry continue to grow, the Minnesota film community has responded over the years with organizations and services for those filmmakers and film projects. 30 years ago, the Minnesota Film and Television Board was created. 25 years ago, IFP Minnesota was created. Both organizations provide business and, in the case of IFP, artistic programs for independent filmmakers, and the organizations still exist and continue to follow their missions. However, while once Minnesota was a leader, global leader, and a film center in the United States, in today's competitive global marketplace, we're very far behind. Other countries, states, provinces have established film financing programs to keep their regions robust. Today, the Association of Minnesota Motion Pictures, or AMP, is now prepared to level the playing field and compete once again, and here's how. One, we intend for the results of AMP's activities to create jobs. One of the investment requirements of the program is that the funds we invest are spent in the state of Minnesota. This means, and it's been said earlier, but it can't ever be said too much. It means jobs, hotels, catering, post-production services, car rentals, and a cash infusion into our businesses here in Minnesota, where we'll derive widespread economic benefit from motion picture production. Two, our film culture and industry will benefit. Right now, Minnesota has a micro-budget film culture. And what that is are films produced for $25,000, $50,000, sometimes $500,000, and they're made on a semi-regular basis. These projects are literally a labor of love, and I've witnessed many of those labors. But while they are a labor of love, there are no economic benefits from this endeavor for the state. There are no payroll taxes, no hotels, no car rentals, those types of things. It's all people volunteering on projects. AMP will invest in projects with viable business plans, and in turn, these projects will produce work, at least in part, in Minnesota and come into the state and come into contact with our businesses and our communities, our crew base, our vendors, talent, and we'll benefit from that. In addition, we intend to work with mid-career Minnesota producers to foster growth in the scale and quality and accessibility needed to be able to access this program while maintaining the high standards of this program. These projects have to have not only the vision and the good creative properties, but the excellent business planning behind it. We want to bring our community, our indigenous filmmaking community, up with this program. Because we intend to work with experienced and highly qualified consultants, the projects that AMP and the state of Minnesota become associated with will encourage other investors, capital ventures, or venture capitalists, and wealth managers to participate in these projects as well. So our film culture will further develop in terms of production quality, budgets, and reputations for the state, and more. AMP is the next level of development for the state of Minnesota in the film industry in order to become a bona fide film center. Through AMP, we have the means to continue to build the Minnesota legacy of film culture and industry and to build upon it. It is attainable right now. And not only is it attainable, it's reimbursable. As Robert and Denise and Ralph have outlined, these films will be repaid to the state of Minnesota. We intend to carefully place these funds in projects to make sure that this happens. So just to finish up, through our proposed legislation, AMP will provide benefits to the state of Minnesota in the beginning by bringing the money back to the state and hiring people and giving business to our Minnesota businesses. And then at the end, by requiring that these funds be paid back into the state. And additionally, our film legacy, films made in Minnesota, the lexicon will be added to films like Fargo and Grumpy Old Men and Into Temptation and others will add films to that list. And it'll increase our reputation as a state overall. Thanks.
Well, we'd now like to stand for any questions.
Senate co-authors, support from the administration.
That's our next step.
How about it more
And we're
broadly?
having a hearing today. We obviously.
It's a joint hearing with the
It's a
Senate.
joint hearing with the Senate, which is the first one we've
Authors
had.
yet.
We haven't put a bill in yet also. And we have, putting the legacy bill together is a really pretty complicated process.
Oh, it's easy.
He's done it. I'm just following his lead.
How much money are we talking about? Because the legacy fund is somewhat of a finite entity right now, but how much of the money do you want to invest? Do you have 30 million, 60 million,
Well,
10 million?
Ideally, 30 million would be a really good number, but we could do a lot with 15 million. We could start, unfortunately, it's not the kind of thing that you'd like to dip your toes in with 10,000 or 20,000 or something like that. You want to be able to go out and have, for example, if you pick one film and that film's a bust, then where are you? We're looking at investments of 2 million to 3 million a film. And again, these figures are not researched figures. One of the things we don't know is we don't even know how much money the legacy has this year. Depends on what our tax structure is and that sort of thing.
If I may follow, you anticipated my next question. Not every movie is a hit.
Yes,
So,
right.
so we're taking some inherent risk
Well-
with public dollars and investing them in something that we don't know if there's going to be any
Okay.
kind of return.
Well, on that,
He's more liberal and braver than I am.
hey, shh. Do not quote that one. No, seriously, first of all, in arts history culture last time was about $106 million that we spent. We can expect that there will be at least that much. Obviously, you got the Arts Council and Historical Society and others claiming sizable chunks of that money. Indications are that we're going to have some number north of that to work with this time. Now, your question is, let me answer it this way. The Legacy Fund gives grants out. And, you know, for example, to the arts councils, and they give grants then. And, you know, we don't realize any return on that grant money. You know, this is money from the Legacy Fund. If worst case scenario, it's like a grant that doesn't come back. However, even with that, the money being granted is turning over. If it's a movie that doesn't make money, it still is being made. It still is hiring painters and electricians and, you know, caterers and hotels, these things that we talked about. And so money is still being turned over and returned to the state of Minnesota through the taxes that they pay and through the jobs that are created during the course of the film. So I don't look on it as a risk in that type of situation. Again, you could look on it as grant money, or you could look on it as even as just grant money, we're going to get a return of some type. Best case scenario, the money comes back, and we also have a percentage of the profits that return to the state of Minnesota. For example, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the movie Fargo was made for, I believe, $7 million. Had the state of Minnesota put in $3 million, I believe on the worldwide gross of that, we would have, the state of Minnesota would have received $24 million on their investment. Now that's maybe an exception, but I'll just give you one example.
Urdahl, if I just ask you more about the specifics on the money. An aide told me that last year the arts and cultural heritage portion of the Legacy Fund was $52 million. And Representative Kahn mentioned $30 million.
That's annual.
Annual. So you're talking taking $30 million out of that 52?
No.
Okay. I mean,
It's 100. We do biennial appropriation. So it's 100. We look at $106 million. That's over the biennium. That's what we were looking at.
So you're thinking $30 million, and is that $106 million? Is that the arts and the?
That's what it was last time. It's going to be a little bit higher this time.
So you're thinking $30 million for the biennium out of that arts.
And don't get too solid on the numbers here.
Yeah.
I mean, 30 million might be high. You know, we could maybe, as Phyllis was saying, Representative Kahn, you know, maybe we're looking at 10 to 15, but we do want to have a number that is at least significant enough to make a difference. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Do we have to stop doing other legacy spending?
No, this is not meant to be in competition with the Film Board or with IFP or anything else.
About gubernatorial support, it was mentioned governor intervening on getting railroads. I recall Jesse Ventura's very first trade mission was to Hollywood. Do you need a governor to get involved? I know Mark Dayton's not an actor, but...
It's always helpful. We would hope that the governor would be enthusiastic and would see this goes. But the legislature does prepare a bill and send it to the governor. And, you know, again, that 30 million is an all-time high figure for the biennium. We could start with certainly half that without a problem. And
figure though like that to drum up interest, like a Jesse Ventura or Josh Hartnett, who's supposed to be here.
We're talking about, well, we didn't, I don't want to say why he didn't come here, but it was a money.
Well, you know, I just want to say that we have a meeting with the governor, and I'd like to spend the last 2 minutes or so, have Ralph Winter address some of the questions that you asked. I think that would be appropriate, and have him come in and wrap some of that up.
And we welcome Senator Tomassoni, who is actually, you know, he had agreed to be the author of the bill, but it does go through his committee, so we're very pleased to have him join us.
The Film Board, for example, uses general fund dollars is what they have been looking for. So it's not legacy.
Right.
Projects that get legacy funds are supposed to adhere to a legacy mission. So I don't think that's something Mr. Weiner can answer. Can one of somebody else?
If we were to do this, and if this were to be successful, I mean, if we just had gotten Fargo, that would be a legacy mission for that all. I mean, one of the most offensive things I can think of as a somewhat literate Minnesota, is that The Great Gatsby was filmed in Australia, and they have this kind of project. I mean, if anything should have been filmed in St. Paul, that film should have been. Now, I don't say that we maybe can totally compete with Australia, but they have this kind of project. And so those kinds of things are an enduring legacy when you look at some of the films that, you know, that have been made in Minnesota and have been shown again and again.
We have a precedent with the legacy funding also of putting some into films. We funded a TPT documentary, for example. It's going to be premiered in November, so this has been done. But try to get some questions for these guys.
Gentlemen, can you give an estimate as to how much, like, A Serious Man was shot mostly here just a few years ago? Do you have any idea, or can you give us an estimate as to how much a big budget Hollywood movie would mean to a local economy? I mean, are there any estimates out there if it were shot entirely here?
We did North Country on the Iron Range, and I think we put in just a couple $100,000.
The budget was $10 million.
Yeah, on North Country?
Yes.
Yes, and we know that we had, just out of the $200,000 that we invested from the IRRRB, that we had over $1.5 million of local impact. And that was just 2 weeks of filming, and the really, really disappointing part about it all was that because of the fact that they had a better deal out in New Mexico, they only filmed half of the film up in the Iron Range, and what was even worse was the bar scenes were filmed in New Mexico instead of on the Iron Range, and that was really disappointing. So,
I know the Minnesota connections of the other three partners, but what brings your interest to this project?
I've made a couple of movies with Robert. We've been friends for a long time, and I think the opportunity to, you know, spread the word about this as a potential partner for movies. Independent producers are looking for these kind of partnerships, so this is pretty unique.
And it would be unconventional compared to the funding processes you've had on your previous.
Well, there's not public funds doing that in the past. It's mostly private investors doing it. And it's mostly tax credits and rebates, and that's sort of a flavor of the week business. It's New Mexico this week, and then it's Shreveport, and then it's Detroit, and that moves around. Everyone looks for the best value to produce the movie. So any way that you can put together a package between credits and investment and other things that attract filmmakers, people want to get the most money on the screen, and so they look for those incentives.
Is that the driving force, or as a producer, is there something that Minnesota has? I mean, I know you casually mentioned the snow, but is there something that Minnesota, is there a draw?
You look for a bunch of things as a producer. You look for, you know, what the landscape is. You're not going to do a surf movie here, probably, although maybe there's, I don't know,
Surfing on North Shore?
Well, there you go. So maybe you could do a surf movie here. You look for infrastructure for crew. You look for incentives. And equipment. So you look for all those kinds of things, not just that somebody's offering 35% or 22%. It's a combination of those things. So I think you need to educate the rest of the country and, again, the world about doing this kind of stuff, because people want to shoot here in America from other countries, and so you have a look in some of your neighborhoods that can be anywhere in America, so why couldn't it be here? Why couldn't movies that shoot in North Carolina or Atlanta, you know, come and shoot here? I have a picture that's scheduled to shoot in Atlanta. Maybe we shoot it here. You know, we'll see how that works out. It's a $5.5 million movie. So the idea of being able to piece together the financing and bring that movie here, why not?
So as far as you all know, no other state, this is a unique program in this country so far.
Yeah, but other countries are doing this, yeah. But I don't think any of the states.
$375 million in Canada using this.
And Australia and other places.
Is that per year?
I believe so.
Yes. $3 million per year. Yeah.
We actually meet the governor. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.